Welcome back, everybody. You can see I'm wired for sound, so hopefully you can hear me a little better. We're just about to launch a poll that will ask you some questions that are relevant to the presentations that you've just heard. That gives a moment for our panelists to organise themselves. And please continue to send your questions through the Q&A function of Zoom, and I'll make sure I'll ask as many as I can in the time that we have available to us. Please also join me in thanking all of our presenters who were just fabulous, I have to say, and very heartfelt. So thank you to all of them. And I'll make sure I raise some of your answers to the questions of the poll during the Q&A session with our panelists. I'm sure they'll be interested in your responses, which I'm going to happily share just before we open up the Q&A session. I hope you all found those presentations useful to you as well. Please don't hesitate to make yourself a coffee as well if you're preparing to sit down for the Q&A session, or have a few chocolates as I have already done. We'll just keep it up for a few more seconds. You can see our panelists coming into view. There they are with their gorgeous faces. I think I can say I'll share the results now because I can see all their lovely faces ready to go. Thank you to everybody for responding to those questions. Very interesting responses, I have to say. And while you're looking at those, it is my great pleasure to introduce Tash, who will, maybe all of you wave as I introduce you. There's Tash, Jamie, Katie, and the gorgeous Tiff. I just have to say I cannot thank you all enough for your fantastic presentations, which I am sure those watching today have found extremely useful. I wanted to particularly start with you, Katie, if that's okay, and just ask you what made you realise that it was time to be tested?
I think it was, for me, it was time to get tested when I thought, no, I'm starting to move into a phase of life where that information and knowing whether I'm positive or negative is very useful. I can make decisions around, I don't know, all that stuff. And I think it had been at the back of my mind for quite a long time, and I was like, no, I think it's time, and knowing that it was sort of just hanging at the back there, I'm like, let's address it.
And Jamie, because Katie, was really interesting. I remember we've had a discussion in the past, because I know, Jamie, you were tested when you were 18.
Yeah.
And I know, Katie, that was something that you were considering at that age, and then you decided there were other things that you'd rather do, which I'm sure I know many community members have that similar experience where they turn 18 and that's the plan, and then they go off and do other things. For you, Jamie, what made you decide to be tested at 18, and that was it? You weren't going to do anything else but be tested.
Yeah, that's it. I guess it's part of my personality. Like, I make my mind up, I'm going to do something and it gets done. So that was it. I knew I couldn't get tested before 18 because, well, at that point I don't think you could, unless it was extreme special circumstances. Yeah. But I just went, I'm 18 in 12 months or whatever. I'll get it over and done with really quick. And yeah, probably not something you should rush. I found out the hard way, but
yeah. So on reflection, would you follow the same process again, or would you do something differently?
I would definitely do it differently. I would have, with, hindsight's a magical thing. Knowing what I know now, I would have taken my time and actually probably done what a lot of other people have done, like what Katie's done, and waited a little bit longer and kind of, achieved a few things before I had already written off my life. So, I would I would have gone into it with a bit more open mind and just thought it through a bit. But you don't really do that at 18 for some people. So
Really? You saying that we're not all mature at 18 and can make the most rational decisions at that age, Jamie?
look,
Is
I'm
that what
not
you're
saying I
saying?
wasn't perfect at 18. I just, maybe I wasn't mature enough.
And Katie, do you think it helped you to wait that little bit longer?
Yes, definitely. I think it helped knowing that I'd achieved a number of things that I achieved before getting tested. And I think with just that little bit of extra maturity, I'm not sure what 5 years brings, but it might bring something. It enabled me to say, okay, you have the gene, well, you're not unwell, go live hard. But in a positive way.
Does that include going to Brunetti's, Katie? I just want to check that for our audience today.
Always,
just checking. Okay, that's straight out of Katie's mouth, people. She's an expert in the field.
Yeah.
And Tash and Tiff, please feel free to also add your thoughts on that around testing. I know the two of you specifically spoke on growing up in a Huntington's family, but would you reiterate what Jamie and Katie have said, or is there anything additional you'd like to add?
So like Jamie, I went and got tested pretty much the minute I turned 18. And I guess you could get this from our video a bit, is that we grew up in a family where we were taught that knowledge is power, and that wasn't just to do with HD, that was just in general. And so that was how we were with HD as well. And so when I came to 18 and getting my test results, I looked at it as, knowledge is power. Knowing my gene results is power. It makes me be able to make better choices. And so when I got my gene positive result at 18, I saw it as an opportunity to be really powerful about every step I took in my life. Am I going to waste my time doing X, Y, Z and spending money on that as well, when I can be a bit more critical about how I spend my time that I do have, rather than put it off for so long and maybe waste money and waste time and, do things that you wouldn't otherwise prioritize. So for me, having that view on life, that knowledge is power, that was really powerful for me. But I also really respect and try to understand the complete other view where other people wouldn't see it as power. So that's my view on it as now. Yeah.
Which is great. And this is why I want all these alternative views, because the community is diverse and you're allowed to have alternative viewpoints, and someone may relate to each one of you, which will be fantastic. Tiff, is there anything you wanted to add?
I think I'm more like Tash. I wanted to know if I was going to get sick, whether I should have kids early or later, because I didn't want to not know and then have kids later on and only get a small amount of time with them before I got sick. So that was a big thing for me. Like Jamie, I was pretty much writing off my life. I thought I was positive and I ended up being positive. But I think I get what Jamie's saying. I just wonder if I'm the opposite of Jamie in the fact that I was positive and she was negative. So she thinks that the decision was wrong, where I feel the decision was right. Because I know now, and I can now plan my life around what's going to happen.
I think what you're all saying to me is that's a decision that is a very individual decision, and only proceed with it when you're comfortable to do so. And that's very individual in terms of where you are in your life. And I'd absolutely support that recommendation that you're all making. And on that note, we have a really interesting question from the community in relation to genetic counsellors. What do you think, given your experiences, they should know or do differently in order to support people through the process?
Was that directed at anyone in
the panel? And I know it's a big question, that's why you all looked at me like that. There's your doozer.
Yeah, I'm happy to say what I feel.
Go for it, Tash.
My dad's family was complete opposite to how we were raised in terms of Huntington's. It was a big secret. They were ashamed of it. They got him out of the home as quickly as they could, like the family home. And so when I went to my genetic counselling, there was a big focus on that, like the past. rather than and what we'd grown up in, and what the past generations had done. There wasn't a focus on there wasn't a huge focus on the future. How was I going to handle it? Who was my support? How was I going to react to that? You know, how is my life still going to be good, and all the things that I could achieve? So I think less about the past and more about how we can change in the future for just ourselves and our immediate family. I don't know if that's the same experience that everyone else had, but that was certainly the experience that I had.
I think it's really interesting for all of you to speak about your experiences, because I think we learn from that. And I mean, I don't know, Jamie, whether you want to talk about your experience, but would there be anything that you would recommend to genetic counsellors for those that might potentially be listening today and considering their options?
Yeah, sure. So the genetic counsellor I had was middle-aged man, never met him before, couldn't relate to him at all. And it was so easy to bluff my way through it. Like, it was very clear that I was not ready to get tested. Like,
Okay.
you know, I had a massive drinking problem. You
Yep.
know, I was living by myself, 3 hours away from my friends and family. I made it very clear I didn't have a lot of friends where I was. But I said to him, you know, I want to get tested and this is what I want. And he kind of went, okay. And I was like, you know,
Yeah.
it kind of, I think if you need to find the right genetic counsellor, like you need to find someone that you can kind of connect with, or, you know, someone who's actually going to listen and understand. And you want someone that is going to offer you the right support during and after, you know, before, during and after the process. Like, it's such a big decision that someone just to go, okay, cool, you know, that's what you want, that's what you get. That's not really how it should have worked. That was just my experience. You know, I know there's probably a lot more help and a lot more wider variety out there now. Like, as I said, I got tested over 10 years ago now. So yeah, it's probably a bit different, but.
Can I ask you all, because this has been my experience in the time I've been here, do you think that seeking support through a counsellor before going and seeing a genetic counsellor would help with looking at the pros and cons of the decision that you're making before you then go through a genetic counselling process?
I would say definitely, because I was seeing a counsellor, and we actually sat down and did the pros and cons. What would you do if you found out, and found out either way? How would you handle the process? So we sort of teased out and explored everything before I went to do genetic counselling. The other thing, and this ties into that question of what would you have done differently at genetic counselling. Result day was it. They dropped the result on me, found out it was positive, and that was it from the genetic counselling side. Now, I was lucky I had the counselling to help me process that, but there wasn't that additional support with the outcome. But I got tested 15 years ago, so I'm not sure if it's different now.
And I think that's why it's really, I think all of your experiences are really useful, because no matter where you're situated in Victoria or across the country, everybody's had different experiences of genetic counselling. So I think it's great to sort of have those inputs. And I particularly want to ask Tash and Tiff, but of course, Jamie and Katie, feel free to jump in. Just in relation to growing up in a Huntington's family, I suppose on reflection, what has been really useful for you in coming to terms with your own journey, and what on reflection what would you have changed? I might go, I lost Tash. Did I lose Tash? I think I lost her. I didn't cut her off, I promise people. Tiff, I might refer to you until we have Tash back. Technical problems, people, we have them today. Tiff, just maybe could you refer a little bit to your situation in growing up with mum, and did you openly discuss Huntington's? If so, was that helpful? And if not, would it have been helpful? Tash is back, but go, Tiff.
As a kid, as in under the age of 11, 12, it wasn't spoken about at all.
Yep.
And I think it was a good thing in a way that we weren't given every single detail, but I think we should have been maybe led up to it, like with Nan, it was, Nan's sick because she's old, but I think we should have sort of been given the, Nan is sick because there is something going on, maybe not all the gory details, but, a lead up rather than just sitting us down one day and going, oh, your mum's sick, like your Nan, and this is going to happen, and pouring it on a child whose mum's getting sick all at once. But as I grew up, the support, I'm very open about it. My mum wasn't, but me, my brother, my sister, we are all very, very open about it. I've done events at my football club surrounding Huntington's and stuff like that. So I think knowledge, I think it's better knowing, but just, it's a build up rather than
incrementally being able to, and rather than just in one whole gamut, just educating over time.
Yeah, because even as a kid, I was being told mum was sick, but she didn't look sick. So there was no idea why mum was now having mood swings and stuff like that. To us, we didn't understand enough. She wasn't sick to us.
Yeah, no, that's really insightful. Thanks, Tiff. I really appreciate it. And how about you, Tash? I didn't cut you off, I promise. That was Zoom.
Sorry, I don't actually know the question, Tammy, because I had to leave and re-enter. So if you could ask again, that would be good.
That's not a problem, but I'll ask again. But the one thing I have to say is, I adored your dad, so I totally understand why he went to Rome where he did it, because we used to talk history, as you know, and I would have sat in the middle of that paddock with him, I have to tell you.
He loved it.
The only thing, just for people who are listening, that was wrong with Tasha's dad is that he barracked for Richmond, which I have never recovered from, I have to say to you. But other than that, he was perfect. We were just talking about growing up in a Huntington's family, and within your own family, I know you openly spoke about the disease, and your mum and dad particularly made those decisions. And I suppose what I'd love people to hear is, did you feel that was helpful for you and your siblings?
Yes, certainly. And so my parents, there was never a day where I found out or they sat us down and talked about it. It was always from the moment I can remember, I've known that my dad was going to get sick and we were at risk, and it wasn't told to us in this brutal way that we're all going to eventually succumb to this disease. It was told to us in increments, in child-friendly language. And I remember specifically as a child, I was probably only about 6 or 7 maybe, and we had a lady come to our house who was doing some kind of research on the impact of telling your children young about HD, and if that was a benefit or if that impacted them. And so even as young as that, we were, having discussions about HD and how life will change in the future. And we were also shown that, once again, power is knowledge, because we knew about that, we were able to help the community even as little kids. And so, I guess we just always knew. There was never a time where we didn't know. And I guess that did prepare us, because, we knew why our parents were doing certain things, and we knew why our parents were prioritizing, paying off the house rather than going, on heaps of holidays. And we understood why, other things were happening around the home. My parents were able to do a little bit of a bathroom renovation with a bit of a grant they got through, I think, Huntington's Victoria, so that my dad's bathroom was accessible to him. And so we understood why these things were happening, and I guess it was just normal to us because it was such an open discussion to us. And I guess I'm a teacher now, so
you can't tell, Tash, can I just say?
So nowadays you can get picture storybooks on anything, cancer picture storybooks. And so, as a teacher and a HD advocate, that'd be almost my recommendation, is for those people who do have young kids who are positive, is to bring literature into the household that, talks about HD in a really child-friendly way and opens up the discussion, so that it is normal, and it's not such a shock when you're all of a sudden told at 15 or told at 16, etc., and have to deal with your life changing. Because if you're told from such a young age in an open discussion, then nothing really changes in your life. It's just how it's always been. I hope that answered.
No, it does beautifully. Thank you. And I love that you all have very varied responses, because I believe that people will find that really interesting. And I just want to refer to Katie and Jamie in relation to that. But I also have to mention Tiff's mum also barracks for Richmond as well. Lovely woman, other than that, but she barracks for Richmond as well. As you all know, Collingwood is the only team in the AFL. But moving forward, I'm sure we'll get a few comments on that now. Katie, is there anything that you want to add to that, or Jamie, or do you feel that it's all been covered?
I came from my household was very closed. That discussion that Mum had with me at 15 was the only discussion. And it was so, it was such an emotional topic. Dad would really struggle with it. So it's,
Yeah.
I didn't have that openness in the family. That was,
which Katie's very common, very common.
Totally. Actually, during the genetic testing, they gave me a video to watch, and it was, oh my God, Huntington's was just this massive secret and no one knew anything. And that was my family.
Yeah. And Jamie, is there anything you want to add?
I think mine's a pretty, unfortunately, a bit of a typical story where it just kind of gets thrown on you before you're ready. You know something's not right, but, you know, you're kind of in that age where, you know, you're hormonal and you're growing up and everything's happening, and, you know, and then all of a sudden you get this thrown on you, and it's without any warning. You know, it's normally after a big event's happened, like, you know, like I think it was my parents' separation, and I'm not entirely sure how I found out. Like, I got told, a neighbour told us that, you know, I got told that that my dad told us, you know, but I don't remember. And I think because it was such a messy time in any teenager's life those years, you know, like going through school and everything. Yeah, I think going through, like Tash said before, starting education early and stuff would have been a massive, massive benefit for anyone that's thinking about, you know, telling their kids or whatever else. I think Tash's point was like books and, you know, integrating it in that kind of way. It just sounds awesome. It sounds amazing. You know, I really, really envy anyone who would have that kind of opportunity now, because it just sounds a lot safer and secure and supported, you know, where we all know now and we all move on from that. But yeah, finding out a different way now and having the supports we do would just be amazing.
I'm going to need to wrap it up because, as usual, girls, and you won't be surprised, I'm running over time. That's what happens when you're a Collingwood supporter. But just as some take-home messages for people today, from what you've all said, in terms of predictive testing, it's an individual journey, and you should make that decision based on where you're at any given point in time. Please seek counselling support if you want to work through that process, and it's very much an individualised decision, so seek support around it. And in terms of growing up in a Huntington's family, the more information the better, but do it incrementally and be age appropriate with that information. Would you say that's a fair summary?
Yep.
I want to thank you all. It is such a pleasure. And given that I don't really see you all at the moment, it's so gorgeous to see all your faces. I think you're all wonderful, and thank you for sharing your individual stories. I know they'll be of benefit to people. So thank you, and have a great day.